The Nets are obviously among the favorites to win the NBA championship this season, led by the three-headed monster of Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. I say all that, but we have barely seen all three guys out there together on the court, and that's where my biggest concern lies within this team. There's no doubt that this team is more than talented enough to win it all this season. That goes without saying, but we must take into account the cohesion and chemistry with the team, as well as the momentum heading into the playoffs. Before we get into it though, like and subscribe if you want. Let's try to get to 700 subs by the end of the month. That is my goal. But without further ado, let's just get straight into it. So the Nets' big three have only played like 7 total games together this entire season, and their record in those 7 games is 5-2. Their individual numbers will be on the screen right now, but I really want to talk more about how their offenses looked when all three of those guys have been out there. They have the number one offense, averaging about 124 points per game. Also in those 7 games, they have a 120.8 offensive rating, which would be the best in league history if it was an entire course of a season. So there's no reason for me to believe that this thing wouldn't work out once all three of those guys get back. But the thing is, chemistry, cohesion, and momentum is a huge thing in the NBA, especially come playoff time. Now, I was going to make this video regardless of the Harden news yesterday, but with Harden having a setback to his hamstring injury, that really forces me to talk about this even more now. Obviously, KD got injured during the Miami Heat game. I don't think that is too bad, but I will touch on KD in a second and his injury problems. But it's going to be interesting to see how long James Harden is actually going to be out. They said indefinitely, so that means they don't really know. Could be 2 weeks, it could be a month, it could be the rest of the season. They don't know yet at this point in time, but James Harden is going to be out for a substantial amount of time, and that's going to leave a bulk of the scoring and bulk of the offense up to Kyrie Irving. And KD, who has pretty much barely played the season, only like 19-20 games or so, he can come in and fit in seamlessly, but I think even with KD, the cohesion aspect of this thing has to apply to him as well. Now, when all three of these guys have played, they already figured out everything, so I don't think they have chemistry problems. I know at first people really thought that, oh, how are Harden, Kyrie, and KD going to share shots on the floor when they're all out there? And in those 7 games, we saw a small sample size of what they can really do. They figured out their roles. Harden was going to be the point guard because he was a way better distributor than anyone else on the team. Kyrie is going to be a shooting guard because he was a more dynamic type of scorer than James Harden. Harden can score the best of them in NBA history, but Kyrie can score in so many different ways that it would have been suited for James Harden to run point guard, to run the show there in Brooklyn, and then obviously KD on the wing. I mean, like, what are you going to do with that? Like, Harden was averaging 10, 11, 12, 13 assists when he was playing. He was just easily racking up all those assists. It came so easy to him, and he really figured it out. And the offense, like I said, it looked like the best offense in NBA history when they were out there. But I don't think those 7 games were enough time to build the correct cohesion for the playoffs. And maybe this might not even matter. I'll put that out there right now. I really agree that they are super uber talented. We all get all that. They're probably the most talented big three in NBA history. But as we've seen before in NBA history, talent does not always equal to success. I'm not saying that that's going to happen here, but that's something to really look out for. And if they end up falling short in the playoffs, even if Kyrie, Harden, and KD are all healthy in there, chemistry will most likely be the reason why. And from a momentum aspect, it's always great to play your best ball once you're heading into the postseason, heading into the playoffs. Like LeBron's teams, every single year, you see they struggle, and then they figure it out, and they go on a big run heading into the playoffs, which would ultimately lead them to a finals appearance more than likely, right? It's LeBron. His teams always make the finals. But most of his teams really struggled during the beginning course of the season. For example, the Miami Heat Big Three started off 9-8. I believe the Cavs Big Three, when he first got back to Cleveland for the second time, they were 19-20 at some point during the season, and they figured it out. Both times they figured it out, and by the time the postseason came around, they were playing their absolutely best ball. They were clicking on all cylinders. Granted, they didn't win in 2015 or in 2011. Now, all these 3 guys can come back, and it can mean absolutely nothing. They can just run through the Eastern Conference like nothing even happened, like no one was ever injured. But you got teams like the Sixers, the Bucks, the Celtics have started to come on along. The Heat has started to come along. The Knicks are on a winning streak. The Hawks have been playing great during the second half of this season. There's some Eastern Conference teams that have been playing really, really well lately, and it seems like some of these teams are going to be playing really well going into the postseason, and things are going to run more smoothly for them. And I think that could possibly give one of these teams an advantage over the Nets. Like, imagine a 3-6 Nets Heat first round series, or a 2-7 Heat's Net first round series. The Heat are really, really dangerous in that position, because let's say 2 of the 3 stars are back for the Nets. I'm not sure they're beating this Heat team, and if they do beat them, it might go 6-7 games, right? And the Heat, obviously, we know they're not as talented as a lot of the teams in the NBA, but they do play so well together. Obviously, they went to the finals last year because they played so well together. Their chemistry is pretty much unmatched. They have a culture, they have an organization in place, and that really, really makes them a little bit better than what they actually are most years. And we saw a good example of that last year. Now, this year, the Miami Heat have been dealing with injuries, COVID, all that stuff. Tyler Hero has struggled, but the Heat are putting it on together, and I wouldn't want to face the Heat in the first round. Like I said, I wouldn't even want to face the Celtics in the first round. Like, they have been struggling all season long. They've been really inconsistent. I'm not sure what's up with them, but I still don't want to face Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown in the first round. I honestly don't. And the Bucks and Sixers, obviously, who they could possibly play in the second round in the Eastern Conference Finals or something like that. But my last thing I want to look at here with the Nets is like the actual injuries themselves. KD has been a pretty durable guy over the course of his career, like in totality. But over the past couple years, it's been looking pretty concerning, to say the least. Obviously, towards Achilles. Prior to that, it was a calf that led to the Achilles. He came back in this season. He had a hamstring injury. He comes back from the hamstring injury, I think 1 or 2 games after that. Obviously, gets the thigh contusion. Now, obviously, the thigh contusion was just a freak physical accident where he literally bumped knees with Trevor Ariza, or Ariza's knee hit him in the thigh, and that was just an unfortunate play. But I'm not sure. Is KD's body breaking down? Who knows? And then obviously Harden being out indefinitely. Will these guys be rushed back too early? Will they be 100% once they get back? We'll have to know about that. And while those guys are out, Kyrie is still on the court. But as we know, Kyrie's injury prone himself, and him having to carry even more of the workload offensively, that's kind of dicey for me, especially like heading into the playoffs after a pretty long season. I know if Kyrie has missed a fair share of his games as well. Most of that was due to personal problems. I get all of that. Kind of ironic how Kyrie's the most durable out of, the big 3 this season at least. Those were just some things I wanted to really, really like think about when it came to the Brooklyn Nets. Like I said, if all these 3 guys are at least out there and at least 80% of themselves, they're going to run through the Eastern Conference, and they're going to get to the NBA Finals. Now, will they beat the Lakers, Clippers? That's a different subject for another day, but I don't think the injuries will affect them too much. You can compare them to the Lakers, and you can say, oh, why are you not talking about the Lakers and how you don't have concern for them? Well, I'm not as concerned for them because, 1, the pressure is not really on them to win a championship this season, and 2, even when LeBron and AD get back, they'll be just fine because they literally played with each other last year and it was very successful. So they know exactly what to do, exactly how to play off of each other. And come on, it's LeBron James. He's like the smartest player in NBA history. So he knows always how to figure it out. And I'm not saying KD and James and Kyrie can't figure it out, but I'm less concerned about the Lakers than I am the Nets right now. Of figuring things out, especially with a first-time head coach and Steve Nash. Obviously, he has Mike D'Antoni with him, and obviously Steve Nash is one of the more brilliant players we've had in this league ever. But being a first-time head coach in that situation is unique to say. It's unique to see, and we're going to see what Steve Nash is really, really made out of. But with that being said, let me know how you feel about the Brooklyn Nets. Will they still run through the Eastern Conference? I certainly think so. As long as all 3 of those guys are there and healthy. But y'all let me know how y'all feel about the Nets. But this is Jimmy from Just the Facts, and I'm signing out. Peace.